ordinary Muslims.
India as a society is still not prepared for live-in relationship. The parents completely not in agreement with an equation of this nature, and the girls do not have the option of coming back, because if the relationship goes wrong, then where do they go back to?
It's okay to float the idea of a Sanatan board, but the community itself stands divided. How does this construct come by? Do they get elected? Do they get nominated? It's again opening a huge can of worms.
You cannot have it both ways, where on the one hand the survey has nothing to do with the documentary, and yet at the same time the documentary is all evil and it needs to be clamped down upon like a ton of bricks.
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. Instant triple talaq, a highly discriminatory and biased practice, has been outlawed in many Muslim countries, including our neighbours, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Remember, it's a form of marriage dissolution whereby a husband can give a divorce to his wife by stating talaq 3 times in a row. In 2017, the topmost country of India struck it down, calling it unconstitutional. The Supreme Court described it as manifestly arbitrary and said that it allows a man to break down marriage whimsically and capriciously. Today, Kerela Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan defended the same practice of instant triple talaq and criticized the central government for criminalizing it. He also reiterated that CAA will not be implemented in Kerala and alleged that the centre is using religion to decide citizenship. The BJP has come out all guns blazing at the Kerala Chief Minister, accusing him of playing appeasement politics for Muslim vote bank. Why is the Kerala Chief Minister defending an outlawed practice despite a Supreme Court verdict against it and a bill passed by Parliament? Is it a bid to provoke Muslims in India by once again spreading a fear that they are being suppressed, victimized in India, or that their religious practices are under threat? We'll take those questions to our guest in just a bit. Their stance, while not new from the CPIM, is a little strange coming now that there has been no opposition to the bill and wide acceptance of the need of the bill against triple talaq. But here's a reminder of how the left and other opposition parties had opposed the attempts to bring the triple talaq bill. CPIM itself had called the bill an undemocratic step despite it coming after a Supreme Court verdict asking for it to be outlawed. Similarly, AIMIM said triple talaq bill is unconstitutional and discriminatory. Congress called the bill destructive while discussion in Rajya Sabha. The Samajwadi Party accused government of a hidden agenda behind the bill. So this latest statement attacking the triple talaq bill is also not completely out of tone for the CPIM, given that they have almost always opposed moves by the centre, especially ones that concern Indian Muslims or were made to associate with Indian Muslims. So they opposed triple talaq bill, asking why is it that you've criminalized Muslims alone? They opposed Ram Temple Bhumi Pujan, for example. It was done by the Prime Minister, saying it violates the spirit of Constitution. CPIM opposed CAA and NRC. I reminded you that they continue to do so. Not surprisingly, they termed CAA, for example, a toxic policy of exclusion when it comes to citizenship. And they have also opposed abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir, initially saying that no one can remove it because it's the only link between India and Jammu and Kashmir. Later, they called the abrogation an abrogation of democracy itself. But here is the fundamental issue with what the Kerala Chief Minister is saying, and that is the obfuscation of the truth and actually misleading the public. Pinarayi Vijayan says, why is divorce a criminal offence for Muslims alone? The truth is, it isn't. Divorce is not criminal for Muslims. To suggest that it is absolutely appalling. He says there is different mode of punishment for Muslims. Reality is only instant one-sided talaq by a man to a woman is criminalized, that too after a Supreme Court verdict against this practice. Other divorce cases are seen as civil cases, Pinarayi Vijayan has said. Reality is normal talaq through the process amongst Muslims is also a civil matter that hasn't changed. The CM also said in divorce case, if it's a Muslim, then he can be jailed. Here is the fundamental qualification to that statement. Only men who give instant one-sided talaq in one sitting can face action. Remember, instant talaq was being given in India to wives over phones, for example, over calls, over messages. Completely one-sided and instant, which is not even recognized by theology itself. So why is Pinarayi Vijayan defending this practice? And that's our big debate coming up first up. Is it an attempt to provoke Muslim sentiment in India after all of these years? We take that to our guests in just a bit.
മുസ്ലിമിന് മാത്രം എങ്ങനെ കുറ്റമാകുന്നു? അപ്പോ വിവാഹമോചനത്തിന്റെ പേരിൽ മുസ്ലിം ആയാൽ ജയിലിലാണ്.
One go we oppose, even Muslim oppose. It is not permitted in Quran also. Question is in other religion also. Why they are not banning Hindu when they leave their wife? If divorce is permitted, then why the Muslim man will be in jail? And when Hindus and others will leave their wife, will live in happiness.
Pinarayi Vijayan is trying to get the Muslim votes. I mean, he's been playing up to the communal forces. Extremist communal Islamic forces in Kerala, and Kerala is the citadel of all fundamentalist Islamic forces. Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't take action.
Let's go across to the guests who are joining us. Rahul Ishwar is author and activist based in Kerala. I'm also joined by Professor Dinesh Vashni, JNU professor and a CPI leader. I want to begin with Rahul Ishwar. Atikur Rahman, Islamic scholar, is also joining us. But Rahul Ishwar, I want to understand from you. Is it that Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't understand the difference between normal talaq and the practice of instant triple talaq? Or is it that he is choosing to ignore the very vast difference between the two practices and actually making it sound like divorce itself is criminalized amongst Muslims in India?
Our Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan is one of the most senior communist leaders and a very intelligent man. He knows everything, but he is pretending not to know because he wants to score a political brownie point, and that is very unfortunate. We all saw how he dealt with the Sabarimala protesters, including us. I was jailed at least 5 times. I was jailed for 3 weeks, and he was totally not sensitive to Hindu needs. But when it comes to Muslim brothers, he is oversensitive because he knows our Muslim brothers votes as a vote bank or a collective electoral bargain is there. So he's trying to tap into that particular territory where usually Congress used to get majority of Muslim votes. CPM and the left front want Muslim votes, so he's trying to be hypersensitive. And the core point is Supreme Court has already taken a decision. So in that Supreme Court decision, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan is carefully aligning on the other side. Whereas when it came to Sabarimala, he was absolutely desensitive. And at last, even when Supreme Court took back the verdict in a very subtle way, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan has not been able to make a statement on Sabarimala till date. So it shows the duplicity, the double standards that he shows to us Hindus and our Muslim brothers. We all respect our Muslim brothers' sentiments. We should be sensitive to them. But when it comes to Hindus, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan has a very disdainful, disrespectful attitude. And when it comes to Muslim community, he has a oversensitive attitude. That means he wants that votes. This is the duplicity and double standards our left-wing comrades have been practicing for years.
Okay, Atikur Rahman is also through with us. I'm also joined by Dr. K.S. Radhakrishnan, who's BJP State Vice President, Kerala. Before I go to him, Professor Dinesh Vashni, I ask you the same question. It cannot be that Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't understand that the practice of instant triple talaq, which was outlawed, is very different than divorce itself. That was a one-sided discriminatory practice being practiced by some Muslim men, not all. But he's almost making it sound like every divorce in Muslim community is criminalized. How can a chief minister of a state make such a misleading statement?
Look, Shivani, first of all, I have gone through this statement very carefully. He has said nothing wrong. Please try to understand something in perspective. How the laws are made and how the laws are changed in the contemporary era or in the changing scenario. The first two code of law, the Susa code of law and Hammurabi code of law, Traditions are always taken into the law. Law should be lubricative. It cannot be static. Unfortunately, this triple talaq bill is a static law. You cannot be criminalized for a civil matter, whether A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. Number two, the country you refer that they have done away from the triple talaq, they have not criminalized any talaq.
Looks like we've lost that link with Dinesh Vashni. We'll try and get it back. But I think he was talking about the fact that this is predominantly a civil matter. But remember, when the Supreme Court gave its judgment, it outlawed that practice. How do you outlaw a practice? On top of that, the Supreme Court asked for a bill against triple talaq. But let me bring in Dr. K.S. Radhakrishnan in the meantime. You heard, I think, preliminary what the left leader is saying. That whether it's instant triple talaq or just divorce, you have criminalized only one form of talaq. That in itself is discriminatory.
No, before coming to your question, let me say that it is the part of his diabolic mission of Islamization of the CPM on the one hand, and to keep the Muslim community within the regressive conceptual prisons created by the Islamic clergy. So this is his diabolic mission, number one. Number two, I know that he is a very intelligent person to understand what happens in Kerala and in India and in the world. I would like to bring your notice to the bare fact that India and 23 other neighboring countries have banned the triple talaq, and those countries include Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. So he knows the very simple fact that a civil society should be governed by civil laws. You take the case of the Christians, and the Christians by religious faith believe that which is connected by God should not be separated by man, but they are ready to undergo the decisions of the court of law.
No, that's fine. No, he's not opposing that. He's not opposing that. He's just saying that why has one form of talaq been criminalized? I'm not sure I agree with him. I will say that much, because the kind of instant triple talaq that was being given in one sitting was so discriminatory. There should be action against men who, indulge in that practice. Otherwise, you cannot have a deterrent. But he is saying, Pinarayi Vijayan is only saying, why have you criminalized this? It should still be a civil matter.
Because it is a criminal action. That's why it has been criminalized. And a criminal action should be dealt with by criminal laws. And if Pinarayi believes in the rule of law, why can't he approach the court of law and get a verdict on it? If the parliament has made an enactment, the judicial scrutiny is opened in India. Why can't he approach the Supreme Court and get a decree in favor of his whims and fancies?
Okay,
who prevents him? But this is absolutely a political mission of he and his party to keep the Muslim community as a vote bank.
Is this resonating with the Muslim community though? From what we understood, and we covered obviously the aftermath of the triple talaq verdict and also the bill passed by Parliament, Atikur Rahman, is this an issue that is resonating predominantly with an old-minded Muslim clergy that saw the verdict on triple talaq as taking away their dominance on the Muslim community, also the patriarchal segments of the Muslim community, because women were very happy. This gave them some sort of protection against being thrown out. And how many such cases we saw in India?
Shivani, this matter of triple talaq and, throwing and exactly the entire blame on the Chief Minister. The Chief Minister, I have great regards for him. And he cannot be, put into watertight compartment if he is speaking on a particular issue. Politics apart, religiously speaking, what we demanded from the government of India is, and even the Mr. Radhakrishnan pointed towards it, that in all other Islamic countries, there are arbitration councils wherein these matters go first into it, and a rapprochement approach is there if the couples can be settled through it. But there was no arbitration in the present day schemes of things in India. The women are happy. You said that, well and good. The basic principle what the government of India should have addressed related to triple talaq is restoring the practice of the 3-month period rather than criminalizing it. And if a chief minister, mind you, chief minister of a state is having some power, some ability, some, he can speak on such issues. Don't throw him into watertight company. That's how he spoke on this.
No, I'm not saying how he spoke on this. That's not my aim at all. But my problem is with the obfuscation. Divorce is not criminal amongst Muslims in India. They are happening, right, without any criminal proceedings. It is very much a civil case, a civil matter. But it is only the practice of instant one-sided triple talaq in one go. I'm not even getting into 3 months or 6 months of arbitration. All of that is not under the government. That's anyways coming under personal laws. My fundamental issue is that did the chief minister, was he a little clever by half, or was he economical with the truth when he suggested that divorce is criminal amongst Muslims? It's not. It's a certain practice that has been criminalized.
The criminality of a civil dispute, which all through we were also saying. What I am telling you, Shivani, if you want to restore equality among sexes, you should have restored the Quranic principle of 3-month period.
No, that's not the government's job, unfortunately. That's not the government's job. There are anyways, clerics who adjudicate on this. They will advise Muslims. The moment the government will get into it, I'm sure there will be a whole hullabaloo about why the government is deciding this or that. Fundamentally, Atikur Rahman, the Supreme Court said this is an unconstitutional practice. It has to be outlawed and barred. The government brought in certain deterrents to ensure that husbands don't unilaterally throw out their wives, which is what was happening. Dinesh Vashni is back with us. Can I just allow him to complete his point? Dinesh Vashni, fundamental issue is only this. It is only a very perverse form of instant triple talaq, which was outlawed and criminalized. Not all kinds of separations amongst Muslims. Why is the Chief Minister misleading the public?
No, Shivani, what Comrade Pinarayi Vijayan has said correctly said. I was referring to the first 2 code of law, Susa Code of Law and Hammurabi Code of Law. They have all taken the traditions of the society into context, and then when the changes happen, the change should happen in relevance to the changes in the society. That is the law. Law cannot be static. Law has to be lubricative, and making one type of talaq a criminalization is a static law. We are opposed to that. We are not against the triple talaq. We are not against the abolition of triple talaq. We are against the making it instant criminalization of one type of talaq, which is not there. But
this is not a type of talaq that even the Muslim community accepts. It was a social perversion. So why are you even defending it? If it's a criminal activity and it is criminalized, what is the problem here? It's not even backed by Muslim scholars.
Oh, have you criminalized other type of talaqs in the other communities in India?
What is the other type of talaq which is equitable to instant triple talaq? Please tell me, no.
Shivani, for a state, all subjects should be equal.
Yes.
For a state, subject is equal.
But give me an example of a kind of practice where you can, in one sitting, in one go, instantly announce divorce. There is no comparable practice. Tell me, which community has that practice?
Shivani, there is a kind of practices, 1,000 types of practices exist in the country, which is bad in law, which is bad in taste, which is bad in society. They cannot be abolished by making just law. You have to make a consciousness.
So name one, please, in the context of divorce, name a practice which is absolutely arbitrary, one-sided, unconstitutional, against the principles of gender justice, as the court has said. Name one.
No, gender justice we support, but gender justice does not mean criminalize any type of talaq when it is not being criminalized.
But this is not a form of talaq which can be allowed anyways.
Equal. All should be equal.
All are equal. But if you bat so much for equality, Rahul Ishwar raised that point. So tell me this. Why doesn't the Kerela Chief Minister... One second. Since you bat for equality... Dinesh Vashni, listen to me. I don't want to speak over you. Since you bat for equality, why has the Kerala Chief Minister never batted for Hindu temples to be free, for example? Which other places of worship are controlled by the government? He doesn't open his mouth on that.
No. I would like to know. All other temples are free. Always the highly visited temples are being governed by the board.
But why? Highly visited mosques are not. Highly visited churches are not. You bat for equality.
Baba, how many people visit church nowadays?
What?
How many people do these things? Please
So
try to
just
understand.
because not too many people are affected, it doesn't matter. Then it doesn't matter about the last person's equality. Then how many
Shiva-
people are affected by this practice of instant triple talaq?
Shivani, one has to understand visiting in crores.
So
Providing the
you'll make money off it. Then it's
Providing
okay.
the law and order, providing the road infrastructure to a
Law and
temple.
order is anyways a state subject. You have to by definition provide law and order situation and police for any kind of activity. You don't need to control temples for that.
Why not? Why not?
But why?
The
Since you bat for equality, why do you want to control only temples?
One of the temples in Kashmir, no board earlier. There were plenty of corruptions of
See,
money in
Dinesh
that.
Rashni, this is the problem. I asked you to name one comparable practice to instant triple talaq. You couldn't. Sati, for example, is banned. There are charges for those indulging in child marriages. Also, these are arguments one could make that these are societal practices. But today they are facing charges as well, including criminal charges. Right?
Look, Sati was abolished in this country too early. We all supported it, and it was a sham to
It was okay then, but triple talaq cannot be abolished now.
Triple talaq should be abolished, but by consciousness, and no talaq should be criminalized. Whether it is one type of talaq among the triple talaq.
This is not the kind of talaq, if you criminalize it, it's not holding back a community. It's only advancing certain section of the community. It's not a form of talaq that is recognized. Like I keep saying, it's not a recognized form of divorce. But Rahul Ishwar wants to come in. Let's just go around our guests one more time for their views.
Just two lines. One, even Holy Quran and teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't agree with the instant triple talaq. It was a kind of digression from the original Holy Quranic teachings. Supreme Court also took into consideration the Holy Quran's perspective. So neither Holy Quran nor our sacred constitution will agree with such a bad practice that is disadvantageous for our women. And Dinesh Vasni ji, who I really respect, is really a loss of words, because there can be a clear double standards towards Hindus, whereas Muslim sensitivities are over-respected and Hindu respected.
Okay.
This is the core issue. When it comes to Sabrimala, they don't have any regard. But when it comes to triple talaq, they try to be overprotective.
What about
because they want
traditions
votes.
and feelings
It's a
of
form
people
vote
when it
bank.
came to the Sabrimala Rao? For a few, you offended so many Sabriwala devotees, including the likes of Rahul Ishwar. Then it was okay, because that's about progressiveness. But here, progressiveness and progression is problematic because we have to take into consideration societal sensibilities. So,
Hey,
Mr.
Baba.
Radhakrishnan, sensibilities of only one community matter in Indian politics?
Yes. Unfortunately, this is what happens here in Kerala. And our Honorable Chief Minister thinks that he is the custodian of only one group of people, especially the Islamic group. Here, everyone in Kerala has to get divorced. And those who wants to get divorced have to follow legal procedure formalities. And triple talaq never follow any such formalities. So my CPI friend, I humbly request him that ask them to follow the legal procedure formalities before the divorce. This is what happens to Hindus, Christians, and other communities in Kerala. But Pinarayi Vijayan all of a sudden declared that he is the godfather of the Muslims,
Okay.
with a very malicious intention to keep the regressive section of the Muslims in his party fold.
Okay. I'll leave
That
it.
is what I said.
I'll leave it at
And
that.
nobody is against divorce.
Yeah.
How can I be against divorce since the law of land gave such a sanction? I request my CPI friend to ask your friends in the left front and to undergo the legal formalities to be observed before getting a divorce.
Okay.
Why
That's
they
the
refuse
simple
to
point,
go for the
really.
legal formalities?
That there is absolutely no form of acceptable divorce that has been criminalized. It's only a form of digression of acceptable divorce which was criminalized. I'm not sure why
Yes.
after all of these years that issue is being stoked again, but we'll leave it at that. I do thank our guests for joining us. Moving on to the next big story we're tracking, External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar spoke to ANI's Smita Prakash today and launched two primary attacks. First, while hailing the Prime Minister's foreign policy, Jaishankar asserted that this is the largest peacetime deployment at the line of actual control along the Indo-China border, emphasizing that the Prime Minister is the one who sent the army to the LAC in the face of aggression from China, not opposition leader Rahul Gandhi. He lashed out at opposition for repeatedly questioning the centre over the border skirmishes and pointed out that it is the Modi-led government that has carried out the task of making the border peaceful and secure, unlike the grand old party. Remember, Rahul Gandhi has raised questions over India-China border tensions in the past. Jaishankar has also lashed out at billionaire investor George Soros over his criticism of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. While taking a jibe at Soros, Jaishankar said it looks like election season has already kicked off in London. This is the second time the minister has hit out at Soros. Remember, a few days ago, he called Soros an old, opinionated and dangerous person who always indulges in scaremongering. Just a quick reminder of Jaishankar's plain speak today. What all has he said in his interview? First up, he pointed out how India currently has the largest peacetime deployment at border in history. He reminded, and this was a jibe at the opposition, especially the Congress party, that it is Prime Minister Modi who sent the army to the LAC, not Rahul Gandhi. The government has been criticized by Rahul Gandhi for being weak against China, for example. He also said many things have happened in Delhi in 1984. He's referring to the anti-Sikh genocide. Why don't we see a documentary on that? This, of course, is in reference to the recent BBC documentary talking about Gujarat riots in 2002. He also says there's a sudden surge of reports, attention and views that is not accidental. He's talking about a lot of these reports, especially coming from outside India, on India. The election season, he said, has started in London and New York. The big question we're asking today, quite like what the External Affairs Minister is saying, something that this government and the Minister has talked about, the West agenda on India. Is there a surge then in biased reports on India ahead of the next general election?
If we were being accommodative, who sent the Indian army to the LAC? Rahul Gandhi didn't send it. Narendra Modi sent it. This is politics by another means. Why suddenly, there's a surge of reports and, attention and views? I mean, were some of these things not happening earlier? You had to make a documentary. Many things happened in Delhi in 1984. Why didn't we see a documentary on that? Do you think the timing is accidental? I mean, let me tell you one thing. I don't know if election season has started in India and Delhi or not, but for sure it has started in London and New York.
Waiting for some of our guests to join us, but let me go across to Vishnu Prakash, who's former diplomat, joining us. Jaishankar is never one to mince his words. But what do you make of his message that's coming in roughly 1 year ahead of the next general elections in India? Do you believe that there is indeed this heightened attention on India and a lot of activity or reportage, so as to say, that is going to put a spotlight on Narendra Modi and his government ahead of the next elections?
Well, that is very true. What certain quarters in the West, when I say West, I include the left liberals, the intelligentsia, some sections of the media, think tanks. What they like is a meek India, India which is pliant, an India which can be manipulated, a self-confident India, an assured India, India which is on the rise, and an India which can speak out for its interests. Nobody else will speak out for India's interests. India today has the confidence to defend its interests and speak out for them, is something that they are not comfortable with. It reminds me of one of the US presidents who had said about a dictator that particular dictator he used explicitive and said, but he's my dictator. He's my whatever. So long as you no toe to the West and the West, these segments of opinion makers, you're good. If not, you're bad. And for them, anything that happens in India is bad. Indian democracy is bad. Indian judiciary is bad. Indian voters don't know what they are up to. Can you imagine
a paper like Economist, well, one can very well imagine. Still remember in 2014, they had the gall to tell the people not to vote for the Modi government because, obviously we don't know what is good for India. So that is the kind of mindset that we are up against, but well, we know how to deal with it.
When you say we know how to deal with it, the question that arises is, for example, he's raising the issue of George Soros. Now, George Soros puts his money where his mouth is. We know that he's loaded and he's devoted a lot of money to effect these, what many say, regime changes, but he clearly has a project of building democracies. What are we really doing to fight against the likes of George Soros, but for making only comments?
Yeah, the way Indian juggernaut will surge ahead, will move on, despite the Cassandras. Mr. Soros, with all due respect, is a relic of the past. He lives in a cuckoo land and believes that, the 21st century has still not dawned. I mean, many people have that old mindset that the centers of power were in, let's say, London, New York, Washington, etc., and they control the world. Sorry, gentlemen, the world has changed slightly, and India is not the India of 1947. And yes, we have to put out a narrative. I mean, it's a war of narratives. I mean, we have to do a better job of that. We have to reiterate. We have to rebut. We have to, do everything that is possible. But the biggest response would be economic growth.
Yeah.
And second will be economic growth. The third will be economic growth. Because if today India is respected,
it is because it is important economically. And that's fundamentally what many allege has been the target of a lot of this foreign reportage as well. Maybe nicely shielded, nicely veiled. But ultimately, a lot of people allege that the basic point of a lot of this reportage is, or criticism is, to keep India's economic growth mired either in politics or in opposition.
Well, they can try, but you cannot keep 1.4 billion people down. India has everything going for her itself. I am very convinced that the accelerated growth story of India is just about begun. There will be Cassandras. There will be people they'll throw their hands up because they were used to a certain dispensation. They were quite happy with pulling levers of power. Today, these people cannot do that. Things happen on merit. Infrastructure is being built. Trade is expanding. Relations are expanding. And also, Shivani, the fact is that when there is a rising power, it is natural for established outfits, organizations, etc., to resent that. So this is the nature of things. But I think the confident India, the self-assured India, and the India which is a flourishing democracy will surge ahead, and I have no doubt about it.
Okay. Before I shift my attention also to what Mr. Jaishankar has said, for example, about the politics over the India-China skirmishes, what do you make of that response that ultimately it is Narendra Modi-led government that has done whatever was in its might and very quickly, dare I say, in the face of slightly unpredictable and unprecedented aggression from China, to be able to stare China eye to eye today on the LSE? Do you agree that the government deserves credit instead of, criticism from the opposition?
Not credit. The government deserves all the kudos because here is a government which has stood up to China and stood up at what time? When COVID was raging in the country. At that time, China had chosen this opportunistic misadventure and thought that India would, just succumb. Here, and it is now 2 years. It is rather we are into the third year, and we are standing there strong, firm, and the expenditure on infrastructure has gone up 5 times. The morale is higher, and the world takes notice. So if there is one government which knows how to stand up for its interests, that is the Modi government. And I would, as somebody who has served in China, who has been a China watcher, I think the performance of this government is exceptional and something that needs to be commended wholeheartedly.
Okay. I see Congress's Arshpreet Kadial joining us, but before I go to him with exactly this question on what Jaishankar has said on Rahul Gandhi's criticism, for example, I just want to quickly play out an excerpt of that.
Why can we not come to an agreement on where is the boundary, how many rounds of talks, and it's non-conclusive?
Because when people are their claims, when any other country's claims are not reasonable, you will not come to agreement. I mean, you and I can come to an agreement. If I make claims on you which are not reasonable, but you will concede it because 25 rounds have happened. You have to look at, what is being discussed as well, no?
Right.
So,
Okay.
So look, if I were to sum up the China thing, I mean, please do not, buy this whole, I would say, again, I use this word, this narrative that somewhere government is on the defensive, somewhere we are being accommodative. I mean, I ask people, if we were being accommodative, who sent the Indian army to the LAC? Rahul Gandhi didn't send them. Narendra Modi sent them. Okay? We have today the largest peacetime deployment in our history on the China border. Okay? And we are keeping troops there at a huge cost with great effort. We have increased our infrastructure spending on the border 5 times in this government. So now tell me, who's the defensive, accommodative person? In fact, the question you should ask is, who's actually telling the truth, who's depicting things accurately, who's playing footsie with history? I think those are the questions which should be asked.
Arshpreet Kadyal of the Congress party is with us now. Arshpreet, effectively what S Jaishankar is saying is that, the Congress has vitiated the atmosphere when it comes to the entire narrative over India-China skirmish. He says you played footsie with history. There's a certain amount of mischief going on when you project things as a certain way. When he has enumerated it, the situation is completely opposite from what the government has done.
Well, the government is basically playing DDLJ. Deny, distract, lie, and justify. That is what the Bharatiya Janata Party's government is doing. This very government said there has been no intrusion at all whatsoever. Nobody's into our territory. When our Jawans, 20 of our Jawans had died protecting our borders, had given up their lives for us Indians, that is when the government was denying this. And number 2, does the government realize that they are not respecting but disrespecting the army when they go and meet and greet with the counterpart of China, with Xi Jinping, and give them a lal shirt instead of showing a lal ank? Number 3, as a matter of fact, I want to ask this to the Bharatiya Janata Party spokesperson. The External Affairs Minister said we won't let any status to be changed unilaterally.
Yeah.
And now tell me, please, this thing, that is it or is it not true that the People's Liberation Army is 18 kilometers deep in Depsang from the last 2 years? Number 2, that troops have made access to 1,000 square kilometers in the eastern Ladakh area. Is that true or is that not true? Number 3, our government has been giving a clean chit to China post, this Galwan issue. And instead of raising it, fighting it, contesting it, our government's basically denying all of it. Because of that, India is suffering. India's
so
future
the government
is being
has
compromised.
definitely
Our
denied that
territory has
there's
been
been no
compromised.
takeover of Indian territory as it stood before the Galwan clash, post it. But the government has not denied that there is indeed a skirmish, a dispute, and of course we've been having lengthy co-commander level talks with the Chinese as well. So the government hasn't denied that there's aggression from China. What the government denies categorically is that any territory that was not previously with the Chinese has been taken over, and they will obviously not accept any status quo change unilaterally from China. But Gopal Krishna Agarwal of the BJP is now joining us. I'm sure you heard a portion of what Arshpreet was talking about, that there are still not clear answers of what has really happened pre-Galwan and post-Galwan. Some of those questions are not, answers are not forthcoming. So all of this is fine, that you've moved troops, you have of course boosted the infrastructure build-up, and nobody can take that away from the government. But people don't know what the actual situation vis-a-vis the Chinese aggression is. Where do they stand? Where do we stand?
No, actually, Shivani ji, it is the thing that they don't want to listen to what the answers. The defense minister today also has said in his interview The Prime Minister and other at the Parliament, in the floor of the Parliament, various ministers have said that there is no incursion of the Chinese on the Indian border. That has been very clear. And the position that India has taken, the fight at the border has been very clearly told. What infrastructure we are building, everything is in open. What else they want? The thing is, they are not accepting what the government is saying. They want to accept what China is saying, what other people, the Chinese national or their newspaper or their media is saying. That is what the Congress wants to believe, because they want to create a political narrative around a wrong, false information. They don't want to believe our army. They don't want to believe our ministers. They don't want to listen to our NSA. All have given a clear-cut statement. The briefing to the opposition party has already been taken. What else they want? Only thing I think is the narration is suited, the Chinese narration, the narration from the Chinese side is suiting their political agenda. Therefore, they again and again want
Can
to
I just come in here and also remind that we discussed obviously the latest skirmish, for example, in Arunachal Pradesh also in much detail. And one of the things that came out was that a lot of these issues in the past also and currently, the governments have not believed that they can be discussed so openly in Parliament that you can actually give out a lot of details. A lot of this is done behind the scenes, but there could have been more consensus amongst the Indian political parties in the way we are dealing with the Chinese aggression. Very quickly, I want to take a comment each from Arshpreet and Gopal Krishna Agarwal on what he has said on foreign media and its reportage. Arshpreet, I want to begin with you. The minister is clearly saying that there is heightened attention on India ahead of the election season. And it is often said domestically that parties like the Congress depend on agenda-setting reportage, quote-unquote, or ratings by foreign media for its domestic politics, and that you must stop relying on that for your domestic politics.
Well, at least it's this so-called allegation by the Bharatiya Janata Party is still better than basically having double standards, because what the Bharatiya Janata Party does is whenever a foreign report suits them, helps them, they'd say it's great, it's credible. When it does not suit them, for example, a global, hunger index or a press freedom index, etc., many reports, and many on LAC issue and many on other issues, reports by many agencies, the Bharatiya Janata Party would say, no, that's not true. Satellite images are not true. The structures which have been erected there are not true. It's all basically a dream. And the Bharatiya Janata Party did not answer my question. On one hand, the External Affairs Minister said intrusion happened when the initial intrusion took place. After that, the Prime Minister allegedly in the all parties meet that was called, said that there is no intrusion at all.
No, I don't think the BJP ever said that there was an intrusion. No, Arshpreet, we must not misquote the government on an issue like this. The government has never said that there was an intrusion. The government, of course, accepted the clash that took place between Indian and Chinese troops in Galwan, but the government has always maintained from the very beginning the territory was not ceded. But I stay with the issue of George Soros and foreign reports. No, once again, I stay with the issue of foreign reports and George Soros. My question to Gopal Krishna Agarwal is, you'd make a lot of bluster against these agencies you claim, including individuals like George Soros, who are working against India. But why is it that people continue to get George Soros's money in India and you don't act on it? Then what are you doing? If you believe that this is, vicious anti-India, these are anti-India elements in propaganda, you have to, of course, flush out the money.
No, Shivani, we have to understand there are economic aspiration and economic issues involved. Economic interest and political interest and border interest, they are complex matter. You cannot only look into the political or border issues and not look into the economic interest. We have economic interest with US and other countries. We need foreign investment for our economy to grow. They are bringing, we have to be choosy on what area we would like to them. Even if a foreign investor comes, we have restrictions on them. You can invest in this sector, not in this sector.
Okay. I also
want how much special issues they are to be dealt. regulatory issues, regulatory requirement. So if George Soros or any foreign investor want to invest, he has to invest within the limitations and regulation of the country. But if he supersedes those and gets into the political debate, we will stop their political interference, but we will not undermine our commercial interests. We should be clever enough in the
No, I didn't ask about foreign investors per se, because George Soros is not that kind of an investor alone. It has been said, of course, and we've debated it, that his money comes into NGOs and other activist groups to essentially work on regime change. So why don't you stop that money? I've limited time. Unfortunately, our guest joined late, but Vasik is joining us. He's a writer joining us from London. I want to understand from Vasik, you know, this whole idea that before the next general elections, which Mr. Jaishankar has talked about today, there's a heightened attention on India, and he's suggesting that there will possibly be more reportage, including the likes of what has happened, for example, with the BBC documentary that you and I have discussed, that there will be more heightened such narrative-setting reportage focusing on India. Do you believe that the foreign media is indeed looking at India with such keen eye, and there's a lot of attention on whether Narendra Modi comes back to power or not?
Well, I think it's inevitable that foreign media will be looking at India in terms of any forthcoming elections, and the focus will, of course, be on Prime Minister Modi. It absolutely makes sense. What I don't think is perhaps sensible is such a disproportionate anti-Modi sentiment that's coming out from some of the foreign media. I mean, the documentary that came out last month in regards to the Gujarat riots, it didn't actually tell us anything new, and we could have easily have seen any documentary or read any article from 20 years ago that would have replicated what we saw in that documentary. So we're going to see a lot more of this, and I think the good people of India know their mind and will make up their mind without necessarily being influenced by foreign media.
But Vasik, you tend to believe then that there is indeed an element amongst the foreign media that is very viciously trying to get Narendra Modi unseated. That's fundamentally what the basis is. For example, Vishnu Prakash mentioned before 2014, we had an international media group literally saying to the public in India, don't vote for Narendra Modi. I mean, you don't do that as reporting, as part of our reportage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The media need to show some sense of neutrality and some sense of balance. It is not for the media to decide how voters vote. It's for the voters to decide based on the manifestos of each political party. And the fact that there are elements of that taking place, I think it's up to media regulators to step in and to do their job to ensure that this doesn't happen more. The fact that it is happening is a serious concern for democracies around the world, and particularly with upcoming elections in India for not just the Modi government, but any other political party that is obviously involved in this.
Yeah. The fundamental question that arises is that if there is an element that is trying to ensure that Narendra Modi does not come back to power in this case, then why is it so? We'll, of course, it looks like we'll be debating this quite a bit in the run-up to the general elections. I do thank all of our guests for joining us today. Time for a very short break. On the other side, a big sign of normalcy improving in the valley of Kashmir. Centre is considering phased withdrawal of army from Kashmir 5 years after the removal of Article 370. We'll get you the details on the other side.
नहीं कुछ समझता नहीं तो उसने पकड़ लिया मुझे, तो पकड़ा तो उसके बाद में उसका नाम है स्वप्निल प्रकाश वातरप्रेकर, वो बाद में मुझे मालूम पड़ा। उसने पकड़ लिया तो मुझे बचाने के लिए पहले हरि कहाँ है? हाँ, हरि प्रकाश, पहले हरि को उसने पुश किया, तो वो वीडियो में देखेंगे राइट हैंड साइड में पहले हरि को पुश किया है। उसके बाद जब मुझे पुश किया तो मैं गिर गया, देखा होगा वीडियो में मैं नीचे गिर गया हूँ। हाँ, मैं स्टेप पे गिर गया, तो मैं अगर मैं साइड में होता तो मैं गिर जाता, तो मैं स्टेप पे गिरा, तो मुझे बचाने के लिए रब्बानी आए, और रब्बानी को तो उसने ऐसे ही पीछे किया तो उसके बच गया, वो मर जाता, वो अगर नीचे कुछ लोहा होता तो गया था वो।
So Mir, we just heard Sonu Nigam mentioning the name of the accused as Swapnil. Has the accused been arrested as of now?
At this point, an FIR has been filed in this particular case based on Sonu Nigam's statement. We have visual evidence also that how the incident unfolded on that particular stage while Sonu Nigam was getting off. Police has not really made any arrest in this case at this point, but clearly now with the FIR filed, necessary action will be taken against whoever has in a sense, who is responsible or accused in this particular case. It also depends on how Sonu Nigam plays it out now. He's clearly mentioned that he lost his mind because there was a constant pushing and shoving happening from that person when he was denied that particular selfie, and that caused a lot of problem to his staff who was trying to protect him. In fact, one of the staff members also got seriously injured and could have been even further seriously injured if there was some material on the floor on which he fell from the stage. So clearly that has really upsetted Sonu Nigam, and that's why he's taken that step to file a complaint. And now since the complaint has been filed, the police will take necessary action anytime soon.
All right, Mihir, stay with us. Let's listen into more reactions that are coming on this story, including that of the police officer.
चेंबूर फेस्टिवल के लाइव कंसर्ट परफॉर्मेंस के बाद में सोनू निगम जी जब स्टेज से नीचे उतर रहे थे तब एक व्यक्ति ने उनको पीछे से पकड़ा। तो इस बारे में सोनू निगम जी के साथ वाले दोनों लोगों ने उसको बाजू करने का कोशिश किया। तब उस व्यक्ति ने दोनों लोगों को स्टेप से नीचे ढकेला। उसमें एक इंसान को इंजरी हुई। इस सिलसिले में सोनू निगम जी की एफआईआर ली गई, जिसमें आईपीसी सेक्शन 341, 323 और 337 इन सेक्शंस के तहत मामला दर्ज हुआ है। इस घटना में जिस इंसान ने उन्हें पकड़ा था और ढकेला वो स्वप्निल पाथर पे करके है।
Once again, the true face of the Uddhav Sena, which has now been reduced to a Gundo ki Sena, has come to the fore, with the MLA of Uddhav Sena, Prakash Fatarpekar's son, attacking Sonu Nigam and some other artists merely for a selfie. This shows the sense of arrogance, entitlement, and also the violent politics and the violent ways that are pursued by Uddhav ki Sena. It also shows that this is not a one-off incident, but a serial offender as far as violence is concerned. They have attacked a 60-year-old Navy veteran. They have attacked other people, also physically and violently, and now this attack on artists, including Sonu Nigam. It only shows the mindset and it only shows the approach of politics that Uddhav Sena now believes in. This is complete political frustration, and it also is something that the people of Maharashtra have totally rejected. Today, Uddhav ji should tell us whether he will take action on this MLA, whether he will take action on the MLA's son, and whether such kind of politics is condoned by him or condemned by him. This is the true face of Uddhav ji ki Sena, and unfortunately, today, once again, we have witnessed the politics of violence and gundagardi that has now become the norm for his people.
Singer Sonu Nigam and his team were manhandled by a Shiv Sena member at a music event in Mumbai's Chembur suburb. The singer was performing at the festival when the son of a local MLA believed to be associated with Uddhav Thackeray's Shiv Sena camp misbehaved with Nigam's manager Saira. The MLA's son wanted to click a photo with Sonu, and that's why he ended up going on the stage. The man then asked Sonu's manager to get off the stage, and when Sonu was getting down from the stage, the man ended up pushing Sonu on the backstage steps. Now, Sonu Nigam has filed a complaint at the Chembur police station, and there's shocking breaking news coming in from Mumbai, where Sonu Nigam and his team were manhandled by a Shiv Sena member at a music event. Our correspondent Mihir is joining us to give us more details on this. Mihir, what exactly happened at the event?
Absolutely. So this was a festival that was taking place, a cultural festival in Mumbai's Chembur area, where Sonu Nigam was part of the finale act. In fact, it was his performance that was, one of the highlights of the show. Now, after his performance at that particular festival, Sonu Nigam was actually trying to get down off the stage. That's when this gentleman approached him and tried to get a selfie. The situation was not such that he could have accommodated that, and his people around him, his aide and security guards, tried to restrain this person from taking that selfie, and that kind of led into a scuffle.
Welcome back. 3 years after the historic decision of abrogating Article 370 and 35A in Jammu and Kashmir, the central government is now considering a phased withdrawal of the army from the valley. According to reports, the Modi government is considering withdrawing the army from the interiors of Kashmir in a phased manner and replacing it with the Central Police Reserve Police Force. The plan has been in the making for about 2 years, we learn, and Union Ministries of Defence and Home Affairs, along with the military and Jammu and Kashmir police, have been part of the deliberations. The call is not final yet though, and it's still in the deliberative phase. Remember, 1.3 lakh army personnel are present in Jammu and Kashmir. About 40 to 45,000 personnel are from the Rashtra Rifles, who have the mantle of conducting counter-terror operations in Kashmir hinterland, and it is this force which is going to be primarily removed from Kashmir. So why is this phased demilitarization of Kashmir significant? Number one, the withdrawal is not just a sign of normalcy in Kashmir Valley, but it's also a way to make the normalcy more visible, as the government believes the security situation has improved since the Article 370 was abrogated. This also ratifies the message that violence in the valley has steadily reduced. Home Ministry says that terror incidents have come down by 50% since August 2019. Number of troops and civilians killed has also reduced. Number 3, stone pelting has almost vanished and the law and order situation is largely under control. This is also an assurance that Jammu and Kashmir's police force is capable of working in difficult circumstances. And finally, Jammu and Kashmir-based leaders have long demanded the withdrawal of military from the region. This would blunt their attacks and possibly bring them more on board with the changes since revoking the special status. The numbers are also backing the central government. The cases of infiltration have come down significantly after 2019, coming down from, for example, 143 in 2018 to 12 in the year 2022. Terror incidents have also decreased by 168% since the historic move. A total of 193 terrorists were killed and 111 counter-terror operations were carried out in Jammu and Kashmir in 2022. Just last week, PDP Chief Mehbooba Mufti had taunted central government, saying that if there is stability in Jammu and Kashmir, then why don't you reduce the army in the valley? Listen in.
आपके पास इतनी सारी ज़मीन है, अभी देखिए, अगर हमें तो हम तो सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस के खिलाफ नहीं हैं, मगर लाखों कनाल ज़मीन हमारी सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस के पास है. जब ये खुद कहते हैं बीजेपी वाले हालात ठीक हो गए हैं, तो हो सकता है सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस की तादाद को कम करके वो ज़मीन वहाँ से लेके वहाँ स्कूल बनाए, वहाँ अस्पताल बनाए, तो गरीबों को क्यों सताते हैं? ये मुझे लगता है कि ये जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों को सताने वाली बात है, उनको तंग करने वाली बात है.
My colleague Ankush Sharma, who first wrote on this on news18.com, is joining us. Ankush, just give me a sense of how long this plan has been deliberated upon, and why does the government believe that the time is right?
As you said, that it's a very important decision which government is planning to take, and it will take approximately 2030 has been given as a deadline by Rashtriya Rifles to completely implement the full plan of drawdown of Rashtriya Rifles from Jammu and Kashmir. But most important is the final, this will be phase-wise manner, and it has been decided that the complete drawdown will be taking place in phase-wise manner. First, initially, CRPF or other forces will be getting area-wise domination, like in various areas have been decided where other forces apart from Rashtriya Rifles will be handing over operations and other aspects of that particular area. And after that, Rashtriya Rifles will be removing from that place to other place. And I must tell viewers that this is the most decorated force, anti-insurgency force which raised in 1990 just to tackle terrorism. And now government has decided, since normalcy is there, government is claiming that number of terror incidents have reduced and number of civilians casualties, number of Jawans killed in terror attacks have been reduced drastically after abrogation of Article 370. Finally, government is thinking on these lines that very soon we'll be reducing the number of troops, which is, with Rashtriya Rifles is basically a deputation force of Indian Army raised this force to counter insurgency. And finally, they have decided that if normalcy is there and if government is also considering to conduct election, it is also important to reduce number of military from that area. Now, the CRPF will be getting a big role this time, and CRPF will be getting a major area. Mainly, this is what we have been told by our sources, that CRPF will be operating in majorly in Kashmir and Srinagar, and the Jammu area will be giving to some other forces, and the local police, which is now struggling to manage things with other forces like NIA, IB, Army, CRPF, other paramilitary forces, will be getting a front seat, and Rashtriya Rifles, which will be, as per our sources, will be deployed at more sensitive locations, which requires the army there, which is probably the LAC, which has not been decided yet, but surely the Rashtriya Rifles will be shifting from Jammu and Kashmir to other parts of the country.
All right. Remember, this is also one of the big things that India can then take to the global, sections, because militarization of Kashmir has long come under focus as far as international communities are concerned, and it will be a step in proving that there is normalcy coming back in Kashmir. I have to end on that note. News Epicenter is coming up next.
Hello everyone, you're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. External Affairs Minister